This is the Art of Selling Travel Podcast, and here to guide you through it all, your host, Glenda Beagle.
Oh my goodness. Last week we did our groups workshop and it was phenomenal. It was more than I could have hoped for. I definitely learned a lot in doing it, but also too, the questions that came in, the feedback that came in is only going to make it better, stronger, and even better the next time we offer it. I will say I was sick as a dog through the whole thing. If you listen to last week's podcast, you might have got a little taste of it, but it was one of those things that it reminded me that I do hard things. In fact, every morning that was what I woke up with, and I do hard things. So we're just going to go for it. And I'm good. I'm happy to say I am like 97% recovered this week, which is awesome. And then it brought me to what I'm working on this week. This week is all about the debrief. And I think this is something, whether you're a business owner, whether you're part of a community organization, whether you are a part of an event, whatever it is, there's so many places in life where doing a debrief is the most important part of the process, because the debrief is where you get to look at everything that went well, everything that didn't go well, things that could have done better, things that where you've got your opportunities and other such. Basically, it's almost your SWOT analysis after the fact, because I got to look at my strengths. I got to look at my weaknesses. I got to look at the opportunities that are there, but also to the threats. I think doing a debrief is a moment of bravery, because in order to do it properly, you have to be brave enough to accept that maybe not everything went the way it could have, that you have to have the willingness to admit when you had weaknesses, when you had faults, when things could have been done better, but also to be brave enough to recognize all of those things become your opportunity for the future. So I am going to be working on it. I'm going to talk a little bit in today's episode about what it is that, in particular, that I looked at. But I kind of mentioned earlier, if you're part of a society, like a nonprofit group, or you're doing an event or something, it's so important. And part of the reason why I wanted to do this particular episode is recently I was having a conversation with a board member, a part of a nonprofit that I used to be a part of. We used to do this massive event every year. And this is my first year of not being involved. But I reached out to the person and I said, hey, just a heads up, if you got this binder, inside of it is my debriefs from the last couple of years of the event, because those then become the playbook. Because in it, I talked about how many people came through the gates at what time, because you're going to need to adjust the amount of volunteers you're going to need there. How many people did this? What did this look like? Who were the sponsors? How much were the sponsors? How much did everything cost? What got used? What didn't get used? What was left over? What are all the things that were really good investments? And what were the things that maybe weren't as good of an investment? All of these things. It's a multi-page document. And I remember last year, following the event, we all got together to have a conversation, and I thought we were going to go through this debrief, but the person in charge only wanted to talk about anything that went well. Okay, we can all pat ourselves on the back. We can all celebrate. And don't get me wrong, part of doing a debrief is the celebrating. You do need to celebrate. However, if you want to improve, even if you want to sustain where you're at, you need to do a debrief. Because the amount of times when I work with travel advisors and I say to them, okay, great, what did you do differently? They're like, I don't know. But then when we pull it apart, it's because now they're running Facebook ads, or they changed up the ads they're doing, or they added in a new lead magnet, or they got tapped into this organization, or they held this consumer event, or whatever it is. Now we have something tangible. We have something that we can directly put it back to. Maybe it's the fact that they're showing up on social media on a regular basis, or they're sending consistent emails out. They're doing things to build their audience on a regular basis. So now when we look back year over year, we can look at it and say, oh, hey, look at this, look at that. Because if all you want to do is look at all the things that are going really well and you don't know how you got there, it makes it a whole lot harder to replicate. That's the whole idea, is to rinse and repeat. But if you don't know what you're rinsing and you don't know how to repeat it, it's all for nothing. So some of the things that I looked at, just I did make notes for this. Going back to this, I have to accept where I stumbled in order to know how to make it better. How can we improve? So on Monday's call with my VA, we started talking about this. And here's the other thing. My VA is actually putting together some notes as well, because she got to see it from an entirely different perspective. She got to watch things. She was on all of our calls so that as questions came in, she was tracking them. She took over all of the customer support for that week. In fact, I told people, don't even email me because I am offline. All emails go through her. And actually, one of the things that she said is, I think it was like within the first 10 minutes of the first call, I think she said she got something like 8 or 10 or something emails of people with questions. And it was things that we thought we had already answered multiple times. We will make sure that those questions are put out into the communications ahead of time going forward. Every piece of this is data. Every piece of this is something we can look at. So we also need to look at what we do not change. If you don't know what works, you don't know what's broken, and you don't know what needs to be repeated. Because sometimes when we don't know what worked, we go in and we're like, I don't know, so let's just change it all. And you might be changing, or it might be breaking what actually worked in the long run. So why fix what isn't broken? So one of the things I have to ask myself is, logistically, how much time did I actually put into this? Because I know what the end payout was. That being said, I also know how many hours I put into it. And when you start doing a cost per hour, the end payout sounds really good. But then when I start looking at how many hours and I look at this and I look at that, I'm like, okay. So we need to increase sales next time, which, by the way, our sales did double, like more than double of what our goal was. So that actually right there said to me, oh, my goal was out of line. Because when I go back and I do the debrief and I look at how many hours went into it. Now, in fairness, and this is why you got to do the debrief, I knew what I wanted to put in the curriculum. I knew what I wanted to put into the training. That being said, up until the Friday before, I was still changing the slide deck. Why? Because as people were joining, as people were purchasing their tickets, joining the Facebook pop-up group, they were getting to put in there what it was that they wanted out of the program. I was like, oh, I didn't cover that. Oh, we need to include that. Oh, that's a good one. Oh, I didn't even think. Okay, yeah, no, we need to do that. Because so much of this, particularly when you're doing things out of your own zone of genius, you don't necessarily see it from other people's perspective. The same is true for your clients. If you're booking a group, if you're booking a trip, if you're like creating your marketing and your messaging, it's so important to look at it from the perspective of the clients. The perspective of your clients is the most powerful part of the process, because you have all this insider information. It's just second nature. And it's not until you start getting questions, it's not until you start getting a little bit of pushback or people asking things or this, that, the other, you're like, oh, I didn't clarify that well enough. I didn't do this. Okay. Oh, I missed that part. These are so absolutely critical. So what could have been better? Well, we could have prepped more ads in advance. We went through the last minute ads that we did were so good. They're really what drove things. What was different? We went from using kind of graphics of like, here's what you're going to get in the program, to promoting videos that I had done talking about it. And then also to the number one, cracks me up. The number one ad was a picture of my dog. And it's one of those things, again, you got to get past the cringe because you never know what's going to pop off. It was me in a black sweatshirt covered in pet hair because I live in a house filled with pets. And his chin was resting on my arm and his eyes were like so big. And I put the caption, he just saw what's included inside the group's program. That ad drove more traffic than all the other ones. And so you never know what's going to get somebody to slow their scroll, to stop their scroll. So that one worked. We cranked up ads that were responses to questions that we were getting all the time. I started doing a lot more too, just in the stories. If I was getting a question more than twice, I made sure I did a story about it, and I would repeat that story and I would tell it over and over again. Why? Because a lot of people, for every person that asks a question, they're asking it on behalf of a dozen others that are too embarrassed or don't feel like they should ask the question or whatever. So anytime you do get a question, understand they represent other people. What I did do in terms of marketing. So we've created a swipe file. So when we go to repeat the groups workshop, which we are going to do, we already have a lot of the content built in terms of our marketing, because we now have all of these questions. We've already got the sales page. Like, we've already got a whole bunch of pieces. And before you sit here, before you say, yeah, but that's a course, that's not travel, I want you to step out for a moment and look at it from the objective. Let's say you are putting together a group. You want to repeat the group in future. It might not be the same destination. It might not be, like, there might be a lot of things that are different about it, but the actual foundations, what was it? The picture of the dog with his chin and his eyes bugging and everything else had nothing to do with travel, but it had to do with connecting. It had to do with the fact that it was different. Does it mean I'm going to reuse that picture? Not necessarily. I might. Like, let's be honest, it ain't broke. Why fix it? It worked. But the other thing is that it was also that reminder that sometimes different works better. So what can I capture in future? Like, what can I do a picture of that might speak to it? Right now, my son is living with us. So he has 2 dogs. We legit have like 400 pounds of dog in our house and outside. The girls live primarily outside. And next week, my other son is coming for a visit, and he also has a large breed dog. And so for the first time ever, 5 of them are going to be here just for a night. But in my mind, as I'm recording this right now, I'm like, oh my goodness, how cool would it be if I could get all 5 of them to line up and to do some sort of picture or something with that? Like, not all groups look the same, or like, there might be ways in which I can play that up. So how can I do that? Because again, I already know, like, let's be honest, the puppies are cute. Like, dogs are cute. But they're also different. And so how can I take pictures? I'm going to try and take those pictures regardless of whether or not I use them, because there may be a time in future that they work for something. We've also got all of our emails that we're doing. Again, your group might look different from one to the other, but I want you to track, when did you send those emails? What did you put in them? I have an entire swipe file for this workshop of the emails, because a lot of the things that came through those emails were the frequently asked questions. It was the things that we were getting. We just in turn regurgitated those back, put them into emails, and answered the questions for people. Again, every question that comes in is representative of somebody who didn't ask, or possibly like a dozen somebodies that didn't ask. Also, how many times did we put out emails? We put out a lot of emails. Now, it was triggered that once you purchased, you didn't get those emails anymore. But what can you be doing for your audience? How often are you doing them? How often did those emails go? What does that look like? Because I can promise you the number one thing that came back from the groups workshop was the amount of advisors that said, wow, I really thought I was marketing to my people, but it turns out I wasn't sending out anything. Like, I sent out 3 emails in the whole promotion. Yeah, we sent out 5 in 4 days. And yes, a lot of people are going to be like, oh my goodness, that is way too many. And I had this conversation on our coaching call earlier today, and I said, for every one that counts or like unsubscribed, shoot, what was the number? I think it was 6 people registered. 6 people bought a ticket for every one person that unsubscribed. And if, when I put forward an offer for you that I know is going to help your business in some way or another, you unsubscribe rather than purchase, bye. Like, straight up, I don't mean disrespect, but I am running a business. This is not a charity. There is a ton of free content that I provide. I send out an email pretty much every week. And in there, I try to include a good nugget. I will also include a link to the podcast, which you don't have to pay to listen to the podcast. There are so many things along the way. We're really going to be ramping up our social media as we move through the rest of summer. Come August, I am freaking pumped for what we've got going on. We're going to be creating a ton of content. And the reason why, so that you can get to know me and trust me. I would love it if you like me, but I don't need you to like me. Because we're going to be putting out more workshops. This workshop was so flippin' much fun. Even as sick as I was telling them earlier, I got up, I led the morning session. I went straight up to my bed. I crawled in my bed until like 10 minutes before I needed to do the VIP call, came out, did the VIP call, crawled back in my bed. That is how I processed 3 days. That is how I did it. Some of it I could then answer from my phone, pop-up Facebook group. I was answering questions from my phone and doing things like that. But otherwise, for the most part, I spent the majority of my off time in my bed last week because I needed to conserve that energy so that I could show up fully for the people. But it taught us so much. And again, it was that moment of, oh my goodness, but what if they unsubscribe? Good. Because if somebody doesn't want to get emails from me and they're like, can you believe she's trying to sell me something again? Guess what? I'm running a business. You're running a business. And if people don't want to buy from you, that's okay. I will send out emails where we're not selling anything. I was going to say that'll go out this week, but in fairness, we've got our Facebook ads on a special summer promotion until the end of July. So we will be having something in the market. But for the most part, I don't think we have anything for sale in August. I don't think there's anything for sale in August. There's going to be an opportunity to join VIP wait lists for upcoming workshops, but we're not selling anything there. Those aren't going to go on sale. Next one's not going to go on sale until we're into September. I need to go through what are all the questions. We have Google Docs of all the questions that came in. We have Google Docs of all of the things that people said as they came into the pop-up Facebook group, because this is pure gold. This is our messaging. This is the content that we're going to create to make the program better. These are all of the things that are going to go into it. What advisors say to us, what they're looking for, helps us to determine what to create. It helps us to understand what's going to make it better. I also need to know what social posts we use. Like, we've got all of this sitting in a swipe file. Why? Yeah, the first time it's a lot. It's harder. But now we know what works. We know which ones popped off. We're just going to repurpose them in some fashion. We're obviously going to add some new ones and test out some new ones, but we're also going to take what worked and recreate, rework, rinse and repeat so that we can do this more efficiently going forward. We need to look at pricing. Did it sell? If not, why? But also, too, price is never the issue unless it's the issue, in which case it's the only issue. I will tell you, second guessing pricing is human. It is absolutely human. But pricing is never the issue. The messaging behind your pricing is the issue. The valued explanation of the pricing is the issue. It is not the price. What questions arose? Where could we improve our messaging, our FAQs, our posts? What are those things? Again, going through the swipe files, going through all of the pieces that came in. What do we need to improve? What did we see as an underlying theme all the way through? There were a couple of questions that came in. I'm like, how did we miss that? Like, everybody's asking this. So clearly we didn't put that out there. I also need to look at what additional resources or staffing or other such do we need to have going forward. What were our customer service needs? If you are doing this for a group, what are the customer service? What do you need to have in place? I remember when I did some groups, when it came time to organize documents, oh my goodness, the amount of extra staffing hours that came into getting the documents organized to make sure that people went through it. In fact, when I did documents, particularly for my large groups, I had 1, if not 2 staff people, in addition to myself, independently go through all of the names, go through, make sure everything was proper. That needs to be factored in. You need to know how many hours was spent on that. Now, obviously, you may not have a staff. You might have a VA, but you may not have staff. So in which case, do you have a friend? Do you have a spouse? Do you have a partner? Do you have somebody who has an eye for detail, that can read through everything for you to make sure that every name is spelled right before airplane tickets are issued. Do you have somebody that can make sure that everybody is out of the right gateway on the right dates, that everything lines up, that they have the right departure dates? So I knew already for our next workshop, Becca has to be on the call, because the amount of freedom that gave me to not have to constantly watch the chat was phenomenal, because I did see things where she was able to pop things up. She was able to direct message me and be like, hey, this is this, or this is that, or can you mention this? I'm seeing this question be asked a lot. So I was able to see that. So as we were picking out our dates for our next workshop, I'm also a big believer in family first. She has something going on at her daughter's school on a specific date, because I said, okay, I'm looking at these dates, this date, or this date. Which one? And so based on when her daughter's event is, we're not going to be doing it that week, because I would never ask her to miss that. So we've chosen our next date particularly because of that. So it's looking at what her availability is. What is the availability of your team? I was even saying earlier today on the coaching call, when I had destination weddings, because we were talking about urgency and that, people need timelines. Like this groups workshop, majority of the people bought after 3 p.m. on Monday for a 10 a.m. start on Tuesday. Like the majority of the sales came in between 3 p.m. Tuesday or 3 p.m. Monday and 10 a.m. Tuesday. It was bananas watching the emails come in. When I did destination weddings, one year I screwed up and I had multiple weddings. Their deposit deadline was all in the same week. Actually, I think I gave them all the same day. That was bananas, because I literally had hundreds of travelers calling me all like in the span of a day or two to get theirs done, and then trying to keep them separate and try to, all of these different sorts. This is before all the phenomenal CRM systems where wedding guests can now fill that out. But there was still a matter of getting all the payments processed, all of this, that, the other. So I was telling them this morning, from that point on, the first thing I did before I gave dates, I looked at my calendar, because then I went to the point only one wedding was allowed to be due in a certain time frame, because I needed to give myself breathing room, because when you get too busy, when you get too chaotic, when you get too hectic, that's when mistakes get made. So I spread it out. That's something that I had to learn the hard way. Your debrief, what are the lessons that you're learning the hard way that you can use to improve things going forward? There's so many things you can't anticipate. Even with the best plans, the debrief is what helps you to make those better decisions in future. There were so many little things that I thought I had planned out so well. Getting sick really screwed that up. In fact, our bonuses were supposed to be in before we went live, but I am ADHD. I'm a procrastinator. I put them off to the last minute. I'm not going to lie. And then I went down sick and I was like, crap. So this week, that is what I'm doing, is I am going through and recording them. Now, ironically, it's taking me a lot longer, because there was some really good feedback that came out of the training, out of the questions and whatnot, and finding out what I thought was just a minor thing turned out to be a really deep dive for the advisors. And so I'm doing a lot more work on that than I'd originally planned, but it allows it so that now the bonuses are going to be even better than what they were going to be. Every business initiative, et cetera, has strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. The debrief allows you to celebrate those strengths and opportunities while recognizing the weaknesses and the threats. Because if you also don't recognize what they are, they get to be bigger. And we want to make sure that we're taking the time to correct them, that we're taking the time to turn the ship around and make sure that we're heading more towards the strengths and opportunities rather than the threats and the weaknesses. For some business owners or organizations, the debrief is the scariest part of it that they can do. I fear the unknown. I don't fear the debrief. I fear the unknown. I want to know what's out there. I want to know how it can be made better. Instead of saying it's impossible, I want to know what is possible. Because without the debrief, a lot of what you're doing is based off of emotion rather than what's the actual realities of it. And it is shocking how much data can change the perspective. If you're so focused on just, no, I'm going to go on the vibes, I'm going to go on how it felt and how I think it went, you may just be very downright shocked when you put pen to paper and check the data of how it's done. So I did talk about the fact we're going to be doing another workshop. We are doing one. It's going to be more in the marketing space, in building an audience and what all that looks like. I'm still in the early stages of getting it planned, so I'm not able to give you much more details other than the fact that our dates are going to be September 22, 23, 24. And you can join us by going to artofsellingtravel.com/grow. And we're going to get you on a VIP waitlist so that you get the first notice when we open it up. And with that, I feel my cough coming back. So we are going to say until next time, happy selling.